Hello everyone, so this week I'm not going to do a debunking video because I kind of like to have a bit of a break in between content in the sense that I've done 5 of them and I don't want to burn out, by doing always the same sort of content. So I kind of like sometimes to switch things up a bit and do something a bit different, but I will do more of them in the future, so don't worry. Instead, today what we are going to do is read Reddit stories. A lot of the stories are going to be from the subreddit Am I the Asshole? For those of you that are not familiar with Reddit or subreddit, the subreddit Am I the Asshole? Essentially, Reddit is like a big forum, first of all. And then on this subreddit or sub-forum, if you will, the point is for people to share a story, and then the internet has to decide whether they are the asshole in the story or not the asshole. And it's kind of fun because you read really spicy stories and people have very interesting takes sometimes. So we're going to do that, but it's going to be only language learning or language related stories. And I will just read through them and then react live because I don't know the content of the stories. I've seen the titles and I went by how many upvotes they have, but otherwise, I don't know. So full surprise, live reaction. And yeah, we'll get started, I guess. So the first story I'm going to react to is titled, Am I the Asshole for crying when my entire family started to speak a language I barely know? Okay, so I'm a 14-year-old guy and my parents are from Taiwan and their native language is Mandarin. My older sister, 19F, and older brother, 17M, both speak it pretty much fluently. Well, by the time I came around and was old enough to actually learn stuff, my family rarely spoke our native language. Due to that, I barely speak it. My mom said I barely compare to a toddler in the language, so she signed me up for online Mandarin lessons that I'm starting this week. Today, when I came home from school, my sister was the only one home and greeted me in Mandarin and started speaking to me in it. I asked her why in English and she told me in English that our parents want everyone to speak more Mandarin around the house. I just started to have a lot of anxiety because of it, and tonight at dinner, everyone was speaking Mandarin and I can't really pick up on most of it. I understand enough to kind of understand what's happening in the conversation, but barely, and sometimes I get lost. Okay, I've got some thoughts even though I haven't finished the story yet, but this is to do with people that whose parents weren't born, I'm guessing, in England or in the US, for example, and therefore they have their own native language and they learned English later on. And then usually the first child will speak the 2 languages, the local language and then the parents' language. But as time goes on and the years go by and they have more children, the younger children will tend, it's not always the case, but they will tend to not speak the parents' language. So that's kind of a common thing. I'm lucky enough that my parents spoke to me in Portuguese and I was always visiting my family in Portugal. So even though my strongest native language is French, I'm still pretty much a native speaker of Portuguese. But I know a lot of people in my case that were born in France and are Portuguese that weren't taught Portuguese by their parents for many reasons, It's a very common thing, but I get how I can imagine at least how you would feel sort of, I don't know if mad is the word, but sad at least, that your parents didn't sort of pass down the language onto you. So yeah, I feel bad for the kid, but let's keep going. Then my brother turns to me and asked me a question in Mandarin, and I just didn't understand a single word of it, and I started to cry. Oh, I told my mom that she's bullying me for not knowing how to speak our native language, and she even agreed that it's her fault, and I don't get why she's doing this to me. To be fair, I think I don't know. This person might be all up in their feelings, but I do feel like that's not the way to go about it. If you didn't teach all your kids the Mandarin in that case, then you can't just expect them to speak it and be able to understand it. If you want to sort of teach the language later on in life, you need to kind of do it in a certain way. You can't just suddenly speak the language. I don't know. That's a bit. That's not the way to do it, in my opinion. The mom could have considered sending the kids to a Mandarin school, which I think they are considering doing. Yeah, so she's OP, original poster, is going to take Mandarin lessons, but not yet. So the moment to start speaking Mandarin all of a sudden at home is not now, essentially. My sister then said in English, "See, I told you something like this would happen," to my mom. My mom then got mad and said that learning this is important and she isn't going to let me crying about it stop her from making me learn it. Yeah, that's not the way to go about it. I think the problem of the parents is that they're making it not a fun thing to do. It's not like, oh my God, like let's practice Mandarin together as like a family activity, something that's done in a sort of positive way. In that case, it's more like sink or swim kind of situation. So yeah, that's not good. I don't know what other people think about this, but let's go through the first comments. I feel like I've shared my thoughts already. I'm not going to say you're an asshole, but I do think you completely misunderstood your mother's intentions here. She wasn't bullying you, she was trying to immerse you in the language so you can more quickly learn. When learning a language, it's always best to be immersed in it as much as possible. Some people suggest spending a lot of time watching TV, movies, or listening to music in the desired language, and she was likely just trying to give you a head start by encouraging everyone to speak the language. Of course, you won't understand a lot right away, but being immersed in it will help you over time to get used to the inflections and flow of conversation in Mandarin. Have a talk with your mom, explain that you misunderstood, and would like to maybe set times that are Mandarin times when everyone speaks Mandarin so you can be immersed, and times when you really want / need to be heard and understood in the moment. Well, I kind of don't really agree. I mean, we have to sort of keep in mind that OP is 14 years old, so it's a kid, essentially. So we can't expect a kid to read his parents' minds essentially and just understand their intention if they haven't been communicated. So for now, I think OP is not the asshole. I should have given that judgment, but if it wasn't clear, I don't think they're the asshole. So not the asshole. Your feelings of being left out are valid and you aren't an asshole for crying or anything. Be honest about the misunderstanding so everyone can come to an understanding. Wishing the best for you. Another comment. Not the asshole. She doesn't get to make up for years of failing to expose you to a language by forcing you into a situation where everyone is refusing to speak to you in a language you understand. I agree. Immersion is not a bad way to learn a language, but she's going about it all wrong. Exactly my point. I agree, like the mum is not being fair because she didn't make that effort before, and that's not a judgment. I get it, you move to another country, you want your children to focus on English or whatever, and then the parents' language usually sort of it doesn't die down, but it becomes less often used, so yeah, you know what I mean. But you can't just force it back into the family dynamic, I don't think. Let's read a third comment, and this one is no assholes here. Okay, so more neutral. Learning immersion style is hard at first. Accept that it will be difficult and just jump in and keep trying without embarrassment because your ignorance is not your fault. Stop them and ask when you don't understand what they said. Work at it and fluency will be hugely valuable for you. When you learned to walk, you didn't just start out walking, you fell down a lot. You didn't quit then, even if it made you cry. Yeah, but again, as I said, the parents are not, going about it the right way. So yes, they're kind of right, but I don't know. There should be rules that the parents set. Telling the child, if you don't understand, ask. We'll just try something like that. So, yeah, I think the parents weren't really doing it the right way. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you agree with my judgment, or do you have any other thoughts? I'm interested, actually. I'm curious. Am I the asshole for not wanting to raise my son bilingual? I have a son and siblings. I am married to a Spanish woman and she loves the culture, have no problem with this. My wife wanted our kids to learn her language if we had them, and I promised. So, 12 years have passed and my son does not want to take classes. He's reluctant and begs. He said he's going to take time away from basketball, which is true. If you look into my son's eyes, you can legit see sparkles in his eyes when he plays basketball. He just is so passionate about it. I brought this up with my wife and she said, remember that promise you made to me 12 years ago? I said, true, but I told her that we celebrate her culture and maybe it's time we look into our son's interest. She said, why do I always have to act like a friend instead of a father? I said, fine. She said that Spanish will help get him ahead of his peers. Well, I told this to my son and he begged me and even tried to come up with a compromise. He will play an instrument. And then I'm confused about the last sentence. I did that, he really liked and does it on the side of basketball. I'm guessing he likes to play an instrument on the side of basketball. I don't know. I'm confused. Anyway, but we can carry on. My wife is cold about it. I asked her why I took into consideration about getting our son ahead and also thinking about our son's interest. I basically made a compromise. She said I'm not encouraging my son to follow his own culture. I said we celebrate a lot of Spanish holidays. She says the language is the most important thing in someone's life, so I said fine. Gave him Spanish lessons. He said he hated it in front of his mum. She went ballistic when I did not support her. He had so many classes: school, Spanish, music, basketball. And his grades were slipping, so I pulled him from the Spanish class. My wife is mad at me and my son's younger siblings because I forced them to do Spanish lessons too, but I only took my oldest out because his grades were slipping. He actually plays sports and is pretty busy. My younger son and daughter don't do anything after they are done with their work. I repeatedly ask what they like to do, but they don't have interest in anything besides video games. So Reddit, am I a butt? I considered everybody's points into consideration and tried to keep the peace in this household. Edit, many people say I am just a bro and enabling my kid to manipulate me. Are you sure? Because I might pull him out of music because I don't want to pull him out of something he has a lot of passion for, / basketball. I've seen many people ghost their parents because they did not accept and allow them to understand their passion. Please be sure about your selection. This one is a tricky one because I definitely get where the mum is coming from. Obviously she wants the language to be passed down, and she's right as well that it's definitely an advantage to speak a second language, especially a language like Spanish, which is widely spoken. Oh my God, I don't know. I kind of get also what the dad is doing. Like, he doesn't want to force the kid to learn the language, which is sort of what we sort of touched upon in the previous story, forcing your kid to learn the language. But I kind of agree that if he promised, he needs to at least do everything he can to encourage the son to learn Spanish. And so, yeah, I think just talking to the kid and being like, okay, well, he doesn't want to do it, so I'm giving up, is a little bit weak on his part. Not weak, but he's not really trying, essentially. And on top of that, there's another reason why I feel like the dad is not really trying, is that the other siblings basically are doing Spanish, and I understand that they have more free time. But I don't know, there's ways you can implement Spanish. If it's not Spanish classes, going to a lesson at school, for example, it can be private tuition. I'm not saying it's always something you can afford. I don't know. I don't know this situation, but that could be an option as well. There's a couple of other things he could have done, and I just feel like he didn't try hard enough. So, yeah, I'm going to lean towards he's the asshole, I think. But I'm curious to see what the comments have to say. So the first one, wait, why did you wait until he was 12? She wasn't teaching him Spanish since he was a baby? That's a good point, because I didn't sort of take that into account. I wonder why they waited so long to teach him Spanish, because the younger the easier. First of all, for brain reasons, because the brain is more flexible when we're younger. And also, if it started as a kid, it's kind of like if you do something really young and like you're 12 or whatever older, it feels like time hasn't passed, so it feels like it was something quick and easy. Do you see what I mean? As for if you try when you're 12, then I don't know, it's not as smooth. Does that make sense, or is that just me? I don't know. Second comment, you're the asshole. I actually think you're doing your son a disservice by not encouraging him to learn a second language. Knowing Spanish has more benefits than playing basketball does. I think that if you're going to have him do something, he should be in Spanish and may be removed from music. I see what they are saying, and I kind of agree. I don't know, because it's true, if the kid does like to play basketball and that's his passion, and the dad talks about a sparkle in his son's eyes, I get it, but yeah, I think where he messed up is being like, okay, so if you don't do Spanish, you'll do an instrument. No, you're gonna do Spanish. And then an instrument can, that could wait, or that could be something that he does on the side, I guess. But I'm struggling to be really, I'm kind of on the fence a little bit though. I don't know. I'm wondering what you guys think as well, because I'm not sure. Let's read the final comment. I'm not sure why you guys waited until he was nearly a teenager to try teaching him Spanish. Your wife should have spoken nothing but Spanish to him since he was born. At this point, not the asshole. The ship has sailed. Your wife missed her opportunity and should have pushed it from when he was a toddler. Now it's his choice to learn. I also get that. Yeah, I'm struggling to say that the dad is clearly an asshole. Damn, I thought it was going to be easier to decide than that, but maybe I'm going to decide on not the asshole. You can't blame the kid. The mom is not taking a lot of responsibility for it, as far as we know anyway. The dad is not really trying hard, but I don't know. I'm going to say no assholes here. Maybe. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay, another story. Funnily enough, they're all kind of related to family and bilingual children and that kind of stuff. So, am I the asshole for not letting my child speak her native language at home? Title isn't as bad as it sounds. Okay, I hope so. So my 35 male, wife 32 female is Welsh and I am English, but if you get right down to it, we're both British anyway. Okay. She's always been kind of funny about identifying as Welsh and not British, no matter how many times I tell her they're not mutually exclusive. Lol. This one is interesting. I'm not English, but I lived in England for 8 years, and I know being English or British or whatever is kind of not a touchy subject, but people identify in many different ways, and I don't know. It's not for me to understand, but I know not everyone will agree on identity in the UK. I'm really tired of having to put up with her extreme nationalism. Ooh. First of all, she insisted that our daughter have a Welsh name, so now my family can't even pronounce it or spell it. Okay, I'm sensing some negative sentiment towards Welsh culture in general. I'm worried. I have to put up with jokes about my daughter's name all the time and her name getting spelled wrong all the time. Okay, that's not an excuse, because I haven't met Welsh people with Welsh names when I was living in the UK, but I know there were names like Saoirse, which I believe are Irish or Scottish? Irish, I believe. And it's not an overly common name, but I've seen it. And I managed. I learned the spelling, the pronunciation, and yeah. Now for Welsh, I don't know Welsh that well, but I'm sure people can manage, you know. There's lots of foreigners that come to a country and they have to sort of explain how to pronounce their names or spell them. But if people care about the person, they'll learn to spell the name. Like, we can learn to spell names. It's not an impossible task. So if people don't try, I mean, it's a them problem, not the person having that name, essentially. So yeah. Anyway, I've got thoughts already, but let's carry on. The only primary school in the area is a Welsh school, so my daughter has started learning all her schoolwork through Welsh. This is fine, I guess. It's pointless, but but other than not being able to help her with her homework, which her mum does anyway, it's not an issue. The dad is really rude. I don't like this dad. The issue is that my daughter has started speaking Welsh with my mother's family, her mother and her friends outside of school. I asked her to stop, but my wife said I was being really rude to ask her to stop speaking in her native language, but she can speak English too? It's not her native language when her father doesn't speak it. Huh? I don't understand this sentence. I think it just has very bad feelings towards any language but English, but okay. My wife said I'm an asshole because I agreed to raise our child bilingually, but I was under the impression that our daughter would still choose to speak English because it's all around us. She speaks English and Welsh at home, sometimes mixing them both. It's confusing and it can't be good for education to be learning it in a pointless language. To be learning a pointless language, I guess. What happens when she goes to university in English? Okay, so I mean, I get that people are not always educated on bilingualism, but if the child mixes languages as a kid, it's not going to happen forever. Like you've never met in your life a bilingual native anyway that mixes their languages to the point that it's uncontrollable and no one can understand them. I'm not saying they're not going to mix up every now and then, but you can keep it under control. I mean, proof is I'm not speaking French or Portuguese to you right now. I'm sticking to English. So, you know, that's normal to mix it up as a kid, but eventually the languages will separate in the brain of the kid. So Yeah. My wife says I should get lessons for Welsh and she would be happy to pay and help, but I really don't see the point in learning a dead language when we can all just speak English. Okay, dead language is a word. I don't think you'd be surprised if I said that dad is an asshole. Like, wow, that's terrible. Also, it's kind of weird because they're married, right? Yeah. So you marry someone and you don't respect the culture and language, like, what is that about? It's a bit strange. I feel like if you have kids, you don't have to learn the language absolutely fluently, but I would imagine you would be interested in learning the language. After all, that's the language of your step family. So bizarre. Okay, let's go through the edits. Okay, but now my wife is making me sleep on the couch while she thinks about our relationship. Oh, wow. Am I still the asshole when she's willing to disrupt our child's life because I want my child to speak a language everyone speaks? Yeah, but the dad is giving me energy, really. It's not disrupting the child's life, it's disrupting him. That's what he doesn't like. Second edit. I'm okay with her learning Welsh, just not speaking it at home all the time. It's stupid having a three-way conversation when people aren't speaking the same language, but my daughter insists on using Welsh. But the question is, why doesn't he learn Welsh? Why does she have to stop speaking it? Like, it can go both ways. Another edit, there's a lot of them. I'm not gonna answer questions that ask me why I married my wife. I married her because I love her. End of. Well, you love her maybe, but you don't really respect her culture. So, Anyway, another one. Going to bed. Some comments have given me some insight and I can't ignore all the "you're the asshole" posts. I thought maybe it was just the Welsh being at it again, but well, there's more of you calling me an asshole than there are Welsh speakers. Fair enough. At least he has a sense of humor. I'll have a think and a chat with my wife tomorrow. Edit. I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping, I'll be honest. Might have something to do with me being 100% an asshole to my wife and daughter. A lot of mixed feelings. How do I explain that I still feel like I'm right, but I know now that I'm wrong? We live in the countryside and it's been hard with lockdown. I couldn't work and I was surrounded by all the Welsh in my home without any English outlet of my own. I can sense a redemption arc for the dad, so let's keep going. I'm going to tell my wife that I'll get Welsh lessons and I plan on couples counseling for us so that I can properly work through my shit. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who helped me grow up and see that my daughter was more important than my childish, selfish reasons. I was so effed up, I don't want to get censored, unwilling to learn because I was already behind. And I'd like to thank those who shared their stories of learning Welsh. Okay, interesting story. Well, originally, I think the dad was the asshole, obviously. You could tell he had negative attitudes towards Welsh and the wife, I would say. I don't want to sort of get too personal, but I kind of understand why people argued that maybe he didn't love his wife, really, because he wasn't very nice about it. But I would say he's the asshole, but then he kind of became not the asshole and kind of grew from the experience, let's say. But this story got a lot of votes, so I'm excited to read the comments. First one, you're the asshole. Your daughter does speak English and Welsh too. And then he quotes, so now my family can't even pronounce it or spell it. I have to put up with jokes about my daughter's name all the time. So you choose to hang with a bunch of jerks and you want to blame your wife. The history of English discrimination against Welshmen is well documented. Was that skipped or downplayed in your upbringing? Sort of like the history of slavery in the US? Hot take. And then another quote, but I was under the impression that our daughter would still choose to speak English because it's all around us. If the only primary school in your area is Welsh, it appears that Welsh is all around her too, and she chooses to speak with her close relatives in their language. Absolutely. Another quote, it's confusing and can't be good for her education to be learning it in a pointless language. A pointless language. That's incorrect. It's actually very good for her education. Perhaps she'll pick up Latin in a few years too, to allay concern about her university education. Look, you're an all-around asshole. You married a Welsh woman, live in Wales, and insist on pretending like you're a 19th century English mine owner. Ouch, that was spicy. Another comment, you're the asshole. It's not her native language when her father doesn't speak it. Bah, I can't even. So her native language is only her father's native language, not her mother's. Please, do elaborate. As someone who grew up with two languages, I'd love to hear the reasoning to this. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the dad deserves shit for that take. Another one. You're the asshole. She's Welsh, lives in Wales, speak Welsh at school, and you're freaking out because she speaks Welsh as well as English. Hey, notice that? It's English, not British. Stop being an asshole. Learn a few words of Welsh and be happy that your daughter will have a cool other language to connect with her ancestry. Practically every other European country teaches English as well as their native language. Well, yeah, and I agree. Like, Welsh is a really cool language to learn. It's super niche, and I think that's kind of like really cool. I don't know. I don't really know what Welsh sounds like, but I don't know. I think it's really cool to speak like that kind of slightly not obscure in a bad way, but niche language. Really. Yeah, that was yeah. I don't know. That was an interesting video. Anyway, that is all for today. Let me know your thoughts. I'm curious because a lot of these stories were very interesting. So I'm looking forward to reading your comments. Don't forget to leave a like and let me know what you thought about this video format. If you want to submit stories from Reddit, you can send them to me by email. The email is in the description box below, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.